Linda, thank you so much for that very kind and very positive introduction. It's a pleasure for us to be here. This is our first collaborative workshop with Villanova, hosted here at Villanova. And it wouldn't be possible without the generosity of Linda and her team helping us to put on this workshop. They are sponsoring the venue, the food, the printing. So if you guys can help me give a nice round of applause and thank you for Linda and Campus Ministry at Villanova. Many of you have been wondering, what is Calm Clarity? What is this about? And hopefully this slide gives you an idea. We're going to talk about leadership using science and mindfulness. And today we're going to cover the first part of the training, the science of mind training. So the way it works, these workshops is that we're going to introduce the program, tell you a bit more about ourselves. We're going to go through the first module, we'll have a lunch break, and then we'll go through the second module. There'll be some wrap-up and Q&A, and tomorrow we'll follow a very similar schedule. The bathrooms, I think some of you have already found out. The women's room, you go out this door, it's down the hallway to the right. Men's room, it's to the left, further down. So if you really need to go, don't hesitate, just go, okay? And we will build in bathroom breaks during the session. Hopefully that will help as well. So look, I think that's the housekeeping that we need to cover. Is there any other housekeeping? Oh yeah, if you can put your cell phones on silent or turn them off if you really want to unplug. It's kind of nice and relaxing to not always be on alert. So now let me start by introducing Calm Clarity. So the book, as you see here, it's called A Mind Hacker's Guide to Shifting into Brain 3.0. So we're not really going to just focus on mindfulness, we're actually going to focus on the science of mindfulness. And the way I define mind hacking is using science to enhance the best qualities of being human by proactively steering brain development in a way that physiologically supports greater physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being, alignment, and integration. How does that sound to you? How many of you want to experience that? Raise your hand. Right, so it sounds like this is pretty universal, and knowing how the science of the brain affects you will help you live a much more enjoyable and productive, happy life. So first I want to explain, why did I become a mind hacker? And it wasn't necessarily a positive story in the sense that I really needed it to survive. I grew up in this takeout restaurant pictured here in West Oak Lane. My parents took it over when I was about 8 years old, started working right away, and gangs used to come in, fight each other, rob people. When I was in middle school, one of our customers was shot in the head leaving the store. So I had a lot of trauma that I suppressed, and I was academically gifted, and I got into Harvard. So for most people, that's like, oh my God, it sounds like a happy fairy tale come true. But it wasn't a fairy tale ending. When I got to Harvard, all I really experienced was culture shock. To go from the inner city to that type of environment of privilege, affluence, and elitism, it was very exclusive. And when I shared my stories with my classmates, people's jaws would drop. They wouldn't want to call DHS or Child Protective Services on my parents. I mean, people didn't understand my background, so I began to stop sharing. And when I heard about my classmates' background, about summer vacations in Europe, summer houses on the beach, I was like, whoa, how do you live that way? And it was very hard to find people who understood me or resonated with me, and I felt more and more isolated at Harvard. And because I didn't have a social support network, and I didn't know how to handle stress, I didn't have coping mechanisms, my PTSD symptoms finally blew up. And I didn't know how to cope with those either. I had dissociations, flashbacks, nightmares. I kept worrying about my parents and whether they were safe back in Philadelphia. I kept feeling guilty, and yet I felt ashamed of the background I came from and the stigma of being poor, and then the stigma of mental health. And I just kind of hid everything because I didn't want anyone to know that was going on with me. So I withdrew further and further, and finally I was having panic attacks I couldn't control, symptoms that made me feel suicidal constantly, and finally I decided to get help. And so when I went to see the university psychiatrist, he asked me to walk him through my life story. So I explained, my parents escaped from Vietnam when I was 6 months old. I spent the first year and a half of my life, barely surviving. I nearly died several times when the boat ran out of food and water. And then when we got to the refugee camps, there was so much disease. There was not a lot of good nutrition. So I nearly died of several different diseases. And finally, I survived that, and we made it to inner city Philadelphia, where we were resettled. And first, my parents were really happy, along with other refugees, until they realized they weren't really wanted. People called us all sorts of names. Even as a child, I've been called every single name you could call a refugee or an Asian person. And it was a violent time. We were settled in Logan. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Logan. It's a very violent area of the city. People get shot walking to and from school. It's not uncommon. And so we learned to be street smart and to take care of ourselves. And then, I got into Central High School. My parents always said education was your way out. So I managed to graduate the top of Central High School by not dealing with my trauma, right? Just pushing through it, doing what I needed to do, and not thinking too much about what I had experienced. And so when I finished my story, the psychiatrist was like, have you any idea that what you went through would shape your brain? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, especially the time before you were 2, when you barely survived that period. And I was totally confused. I was like, but I have no memory of it, so why should it matter? And he said, no, the research now shows any trauma you experience before you were 2 actually shapes your personality, it shapes your brain development. And now that you're becoming an adult, all of that is manifesting. On top of that, you experience much more trauma growing up. And so all of that, can be contributing to what you're feeling, you're experiencing. And I was like, wow. I had no idea, and I felt both relief and devastation, because what he explained was that there was no cure for PTSD at that time. They recommended taking antidepressants, and I had to cycle through different ones at different doses to find the one that worked for me, and he recommended therapy. But therapists didn't really understand how to treat trauma back in the late 90s. And so I decided to follow what he shared. It made me feel less bad, but it didn't really make me feel good. And I realized I would have to take it upon myself to heal and to come back to the type of life I wanted to live. And so based on what I learned about the brain from the psychiatrist, what I learned about my mental habits from the therapist, I realized how I was using my brain was making it worse. It was up to me to learn more about neuroscience, to learn how to use my brain in a way that would help it heal. And so I had so many negative patterns. I didn't know how to cope with stress, and I would make the stress worse. I would escalate conflict and tension. And I learned to let go of a lot of things and listen to the voice in my head and realize that it was saying horrible things. And I had to learn to change the way I use my brain so I could talk to an inner coach instead of an inner critic, right? And over time, by teaching myself mind hacking techniques, by getting better sleep, exercising, quitting junk food, not pulling all-nighters, things like that, my brain did get much better. I stopped doing things that made it worse, and then I did manage to graduate with honors. And I had a deadline to find a way to heal myself, because after graduation, I knew I was going to lose health insurance. So I wouldn't be able to afford medication and therapy. And so I had to rely on the mind hacking techniques going forward. So I got off the medication, I got off the therapy, and I just helped myself practice the things that made my brain healthy. And luckily, I never had another relapse of PTSD. So in the end, I managed to do well for myself. I got into management consulting, private equity investments. I went to Wharton Business School. I paid off all my debt. And I realized throughout that time, I never stopped having this other part of me that, my parents still live in the inner city. My cousins, my extended relatives are still pretty poor, right? And so my life totally involves bridging the socioeconomic divide. And it's hard. It was hard to do it as a teenager. It hasn't really gotten easier to do it as an adult. On September 20th, this fall, there was a 3-way gun battle where my parents live. 40 bullets were fired. One man was hospitalized. You know, and the police sealed off the house. No one could leave or come out or come in. And then, you know, on October 15th, a few months ago, just last month, there was a drive-by shooting. Over 12 bullets fired at like 11:30 in the morning. One of our neighbors was killed, 2 blocks away from my house. So it's really, really hard. However, without the calm clarity techniques, I don't think I'd be able to handle it. I don't think I'd be able to stay sane. So I tell people I'm probably the #1 beneficiary of calm clarity because it allows me to still make a positive impact on the world, no matter how much negativity is happening around me. Does that resonate with you guys? How many of you feel like you're often surrounded by negativity and you feel overwhelmed? Right? And so the key is to trust that there's a part of us that can be a light in the darkness. And even given all the tragedy I have to go through, you know, I'm still able to work with executives. Like you see this cover the Wharton magazine. You know, I do this training for CEOs, for boards, for elite organizations. So the same thing we teach for inner city students also resonates for executives, because everyone has to deal with stress. Everyone has a brain that is sensitive to negativity and fear and being overwhelmed. We all have to learn how to use our brains more effectively. Does that resonate with you guys? So my hope is this is not just something that's going to make you feel good for 1 day or 2 days, that this is going to change the way you think about life and the way you handle frustration and negativity and fear and stress and anxiety, and hopefully get you on a path where you'll develop healthy mechanisms for handling your own self-talk, your own the voice in your head, and learn how to change the way you relate to yourself and see that you are strong and you bring so many gifts that this world needs you to contribute to make it a better place. So I hope that resonates and that inspires you to really pay attention today. And you know, with every type of training, what you put into it affects what you get out of it. So it's really up to you to see this as a space for you to learn, to experiment, to connect with people, because often it's that group sharing that makes a huge difference. Being able to share your experiences with people here who you know are creating space to hear you, to be compassionate, to have empathy, to see you, to hear you. I mean, that's very powerful. So I hope that we can give that gift to each other. So I want to ask everyone to set an intention to create a safe space here for dialogue, for understanding, to not judge each other, but to really try to appreciate and accept everything that we bring to the table. Can you all do that? Okay, great. So now I'm going to introduce my colleague Gina, and she'll share more about her journey.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for putting up with all my emails. Thanks for being here. So my story is quite a bit different than what Sway has shared. I grew up in this area from Montgomery County. I was actually born in Norristown, and my family moved out to the suburb further out into the Skippack area, if you're aware of that area. So when I was 4, so my parents were both school teachers, worked at in the Philadelphia School District, and I went to high school, parochial high school, and then ended up going to Rosemont College, which is just a stone's throw from Villanova here. I played basketball, field hockey. I was kind of like your average person in this community. So the idea of work hard, play hard, like really resonated with me when I was young, especially as an athlete. I just liked that idea. It got me excited and motivated. And because of that, I was able to experience a lot of wonderful things in my life. After while I was at Rosemont, I was an intern at the White House, and ended up being able to go to the University of Pennsylvania and get my master's degree. And then I ended up working in management consulting as well for Deloitte Consulting out of graduate school. So this whole time, all of these things were sort of a a manifestation of this way of living, working hard, playing hard, pulling all-nighters, like all that kind of stuff to just say, I just got to get it done, I just got to achieve, and then I can rest. When I was at Deloitte, though, I just had this sense that, first of all, like everyone had said, look, you kind of made it, like you're making a lot of money, you're traveling, having wonderful experiences with people, working with wonderful people, but there was something inside of me that said there's more to life, and you need to go learn about it. Okay, so I ended up going to the Dominican Republic. I went there originally for 6 months and ended up staying there almost 3 years. And it was at that time, I did volunteer service there, and I learned so much just from the people that I lived with, the people that we served, that served us, and it was a really important time in my life. And then when I came back to the United States, I was the director of Cabrini Mission Corps. So the sisters, the Catholic sisters that founded Cabrini University, they had a program, postgraduate service program, where we would invite people to do service for a year or two in the United States or overseas. They lived in community, they would do professional development, spiritual development, personal development, and we actually have a couple of alums here in the audience. We have Denzel and Martin, so if you can raise your hands. They're awesome, and they're volunteering and helping today and tomorrow too. So, so this philosophy of working hard and playing hard actually translated, even though I was in sort of this spiritual world or in this world where it might be a little slower than the, Deloitte consulting, like working all day, working hard, 24/7, all that kind of stuff. Mother Cabrini has this saying that says, work, 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 we have all eternity to rest. And so I kind of followed that mantra. Even within that spirit, it's just so easy to get caught up in all the things that we have to do. There's just so much to do. So even within that context, I was following that. So what happened was, over my 20-year career, I had this self-care pattern where I was like, ready to go, right? Work hard, play hard, get ready to go. I would spend all day just basically in front of a computer without getting up, just trying to get things done. And then when I was tired, the only way I could get energy is I would eat crappy things, or even when I was at Deloitte, I would smoke cigarettes and drink coffee just to keep myself going. And then when I had a break, let's say there was a break after a project, I would always get sick. So I'd just come down with something, and this was a pattern. I said, oh, this is just the way it is. So this is how it works. You run, and then you get better, and then you keep going, you do it over and over again. So I did that for 20 years until when I was at Cabrini, after 10 years, I was completely burnt out. And I left in 2016. I had met Zwei, who a few years before I left, and asked her to come in and share Calm Clarity with our volunteers. And Martin and Denzel were both part of groups that experienced Calm Clarity. And so after 10 years and being burnt out, I definitely needed Calm Clarity, and not only to know the knowledge, but to practice it for myself. And so Zwei invited me when she was beginning to write the book to come and help her with this program. And so we've been, for the last couple of years, working on it, developing it, and so you will experience the fruits of it today. So, as Zwei mentioned, it's a social enterprise enabling people across the socioeconomic spectrum to master their mind and be their best self. And this part really resonates with me a lot. Our core belief is that every single person is born with the seed of greatness. We unleash our potential by breaking free of self-limiting patterns and connecting to a purpose that's greater than ourselves. And then our purpose is using science to help people understand and solve the challenges that stifle human potential, creativity, and collaboration. So before Zwei comes up, I just want all of the table, the guides, if you can just raise your hand so everybody at your table can see who you are. Okay, so if you have questions, you can ask your facilitators, your guides at your tables. You can also come to me if you have specific questions as well. So just so you know, throughout the workshop, come to me if you have anything, questions, concerns, okay? Thank you.
So you can see there's a height difference, and so I was at adjust the microphone. So I just want to talk a little bit about the Calm Clarity Leadership Program. So what we're going to cover today is part one. The first module we'll go through is about boosting brain functioning. We'll understand the different emotional states of the brain and how to build resilience. In the afternoon, we're going to look at the voice in our heads, and specifically how to tame this inner critic, tune into the inner voice that gives us positive advice and break self-limiting patterns. And then tomorrow, we're going to talk more about understanding your autopilot, how to understand and train your autopilot using mindfulness. And then in the afternoon, we're going to apply what we learned to relationships. So it's about deepening connection, authentically connecting with others using empathic listening and responding. Okay, so it's a very powerful program. We hope that you will make an effort to be here both days. And many people say that when you get to the end, like your entire way of looking at the world may shift. So we hope that you will be present and really maximize this opportunity to grow and to connect with people. And we hope to build an alumni community so that everyone you see in this room, we can continue to connect with each other and communicate and support each other as we continue to grow going forward. So as we get started, again, we're asking everyone to make a commitment to create a safe space, to share and learn, to be present, to unplug from technology. Would you guys like to add anything else? Happy with this? Okay, and feel free to make suggestions. So at your tables, we're going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and there's several parts of this. So we're going to ask you to share your name, where you're from, and your intention or hope for the training, which is in your workbook. If you turn to, I think the second or third page. So yes, page 3. You can write on the bottom, take a minute to write what intention you bring to this training, what you'd like to get from it. And then when you're ready, the table leaders will introduce themselves, and then you'll go around the table and introduce yourself to each other. All right, are we ready to start? Are all the tables ready? Okay. So thank you all for taking a moment to introduce yourselves to each other. My hope is that you'll start to really form a connection with your table over the course of the 2 days, and you'll want to stay in touch. We're not going to force you to stay in touch, but we hope that you'll want to stay in touch. So let's start the Calm Clarity Leadership Program. So this morning we're going to cover how to boost brain functioning. We're going to cover savoring of positive emotions, what emotional states are, and something called the compassion meditation, which is a way of really treating your brain to almost like a nice spa. So we're going to start by doing a partner exercise. And so we're going to ask you to, I think we've put you at your table with people you don't know well. Some people might know someone at the table, but try not to partner with that person. So talk about one food you love eating. Doesn't have to be your favorite food, just something you love eating. And really think about, how do you feel when you savor it? Think about the sensations you feel in your body as you think about this food. So we're going to let you and your partner take 1 minute to share each, 1 minute each at the most. Okay, please begin. So now, this time, talk about someone who inspires you and why. And again, feel what happens in your body when you think about this person. What sensations do you feel, when you feel inspired by this person? So now you'll have 1 minute each to share. All right, let's debrief. So it sounds like you were enjoying learning about each other's favorite or food that you love and someone who inspires you. So why did we ask these questions? First of all, when you talk about food you love, what sensations did you feel in your body? Can we have volunteers share? Happy? Okay, so what does happiness feel like in your body? Okay, so you guys felt energized, right?
I felt warm.
Warm?
I felt like my chest was full.
Cozy, comfortable, right? Any other examples? Did anyone's mouth water? Right? Yeah, right? You guys felt it, right? So your body is like, ooh, food, mouth water. Yes?
We had multiple examples that people shared around the fact that almost what's the word? Kind of a reaction was occurring as people talked about it, whether they said tingling together, reminding them, tying to a memory.
Mm-hmm.
So really kind of the catalytic experience.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when I savor?
Mm-hmm.
I go back and recreate.
Yeah, your body's like reliving eating it almost, right? Did anyone's stomach like start growling? I mean, there's plenty of food back there. Some of you already had breakfast, and yet you're still feeling it, right? So that's when you talk about food you love. And emotions, I heard happy, you know, I heard positive, light. Any other emotions came up?
Like satisfaction?
What?
Satisfaction? Like
Satisfaction?
anything else?
Yeah. And
I know for us, we both talked about like elements of nostalgia, like it reminded us of being with our family. So like we liked the food, but we also like felt comforted, like
right, because a lot of times it's your mom's cooking that you love. And then what happened in your face? Smiling, right? Mostly, and if the food was in front of you, you have a sense of craving, right? Would you eat it? Right? So it's right there. So what about someone who inspires you? I'm hoping your mouth wasn't necessarily watering. Your stomach wasn't necessarily growling. So it is a slightly different experience. So what sensations did you feel in your body when you felt inspired by this person?
I almost jumped to emotions, but I felt valued. So like the feeling of being affirmed.
Affirmed, valued, cared for?
I kind of, I guess like channeled her strength because I kind of sat up a little bit taller.
So you were strengthened and energized in a different way, right? Did anyone feel more optimistic? That you saw more possibilities and more hope, right? And you know, someone talked about warm in the heart. Did that happen when you thought about someone who inspired you? Did you feel more open? Right? Yes?
When you spoke about Logan, because I went to high school around Logan, I started to feel my heart pound and I started to feel anxiety. But then when I started to talk about the person who inspires me, I felt calm, like everything would be okay. And I didn't have to worry.
Right, so you just have the sense of feeling even more grounded and centered and connected to that person and knowing that you're safe, right? So all these things happen when you think about someone who inspires you. What about your facial gestures? Are they different? Are they the same? Do you smile when you think of someone who inspires you? Some of us sometimes our eyes water because they make us feel emotional, right? The things that people do and they sacrifice for the people they care about, right? So would you say it's a similar type of happiness to food or a different type of happiness? Different? How's it different?
It seems like with food it's kind of temporary.
So food is temporary.
With the person, it's a long lasting feeling. After we stop talking about food, the feeling passed, but then I'm still thinking about that person and I still feel okay.
Do you guys agree that there's a longer lasting, sustaining feeling when you think about someone who inspires you? It has a deeper, longer impact, right? So we are activating different parts of your brain by thinking about food and someone who inspires you. And I'll talk more about that. Now, was it different being the listener? So that was when you were speaking. But when you were listening, did you feel the same type of happiness and savor when you listened to someone describe their food? Right? Wasn't that different versus you talking? You were reliving what they were living too, right? And as you listen to someone talk about someone who inspires them, did you feel as inspired as when you were talking? Right? Was it contagious? Right? So that's something we're touching on. So we've already covered this part, that feelings and associations with food versus someone who inspires you are quite different, right? And it's because, when you talk about food, you're activating a specific part of your brain versus when you talk about someone who inspires you. So just to recap, food, mouth waters, we're hungry, we can get excited, anxious, restless, we get cravings. If it was in front of you, you'd eat the food, yum, 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 right away, right? You may have tunnel vision about that food. You want immediate gratification, and you feel a sense of hedonia, or what they call sensual pleasure, and ancient Greece. Now, when you think about someone who inspires you, your heart opens, you feel uplifted, calm, elevated, energized, you're motivated to be the best version of you. Your perspective broadens. You're not just being like, when do I get this food? But it's like, oh wait, I see something bigger, right? You're not stuck on one thing. You think about your lifelong purpose and meaning. It's not about immediate gratification. And so you experience what the ancient Greeks called eudaimonia, right? It's very different from hedonia. It's about human flourishing. When you're in this state, you're actually thriving. Your body is the most healthy it can be. Like you were saying, your heart rhythm stabilizes, and you feel safe and healthy, right? So that's eudaimonia, right? So what we activated when we think about food is brain 2.0, this part of the brain that chases rewards and wants to acquire things. When you think about someone who inspires you, you activate what we call brain 3.0, this part of your brain that helps you have well-being and mastery. And we'll go in more detail. And all of this, a lot of this is covered in the workbook as well. And so what you experienced as you talked and listened was that emotions are contagious because of our mirror neurons. When babies learn by copying what their parents do, whether you're a monkey baby or a human baby, that's how it works. And so in the Bible it says, whoever keeps company with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffer harm. Because you are contagious. You copy what people around you do, regardless of whether you respect them or don't respect them, right? You're affected by other people. And other people are affected by you. So that's something to keep in mind. You have a choice what you talk about. Whatever you talk about is going to activate different networks in your brain. And whoever's listening to you, it may activate those networks in their brain. So many of us have a natural bias towards talking about negative things. So at the end of a day, someone asks you, how's your day? You're like, here are all the things that went wrong, without talking about many of the things that went right. Like, we're healthy, we didn't get hit by a car, we're fine, right? And there are a lot of things that went well in the day, but we may focus on the things that stress us out the most. It's important to notice that, and really, for your own well-being, make a choice to talk about things that are positive and lift you up. If you choose to talk about things that you love that happened that day, you will bring a different energy to the conversation. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, here's a question. Can an action affect how you think and feel? And so my question is, does smiling help you feel happy? And we're gonna ask you to do an experiment. See this cute baby? Can you feel that baby's joy, right? So then close your eyes and smile for about 30 seconds and be aware of feelings and sensations throughout your body. So when you're ready, let's go. All right, open your eyes. Do you feel a difference? Do you feel calmer? Oftentimes by smiling, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system and you relax, your heart rate calms. And so William James said, by observing himself about 100 years ago, we don't laugh because we're happy. We're happy because we laugh. And this is why there's so much laughter yoga now, because just by laughing silly for 10 minutes, people actually become happy. What we're talking about is the associative activation cascade, something that Kathy mentioned earlier. Human beings function like associative machines. When ideas are triggered and evoked, many other thoughts are activated in a spreading cascade of activity in the brain and body. And this creates a self-reinforcing pattern of cognitive, emotional, and physical responses. So anything you think about, if it's food, it's going to activate emotions and feelings associated with that food. If it's someone who inspires you, it's going to bring up memories you had with that person, their thoughts, their beliefs, their ideas. All of that will come flooding into your brain at one time, right? And it's powerful. This cascade will self-activate. You don't have to make it activate. That's just how your brain works, okay? Now, what's interesting is that you can play a game with it. So for instance, I see an orange right there. What does that activate? Someone spit something out. Orange. Juice. Okay, now from juice, what's coming up? Sweet. Breakfast. Family. So it just keeps going, right? And I thought about apple. I don't know why. Right? But everyone's brain is a little bit different, right? Someone thought orange. Another person might have thought about an orange bank account that I have, right? So just whatever your memories are, the associations are specific to you. No one who doesn't have an orange bank account will think about it, right? One thing to keep in mind is that we have 3 emotional states of the brain that everything is associated or coded with, and they affect how we think, feel, and make decisions. So the first state of the brain, I call brain 1.0. It's all about self-preservation, and when it activates, something that feels like an inner Godzilla activates in us, and we might want to smash things or disappear completely. And when this part of the brain is activated, we feel overwhelmed, that there's so much to do, we can't handle it, or that we feel unsafe, that someone or something is threatening us. And so almost unconsciously, we go into a fight or flight response. So how many of you have felt when you're really upset, that you just want to smash things, or you just want to go in your room, lock the door, and never come out again? Do you guys ever feel that way? Right? So that's when you know you're in inner Godzilla mode. Okay, this is a part of the brain that's fully formed when you're a baby, when you're born, and so babies can do this. You've seen 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds throw super tantrums. They're in brain 1.0, right? And it's not rational. You can't reason with them. They're just really upset. Now, in adolescence, right, once puberty starts, brain 2.0 accelerates. This is your dopamine system, the part that makes you chase rewards and look for happiness, often outside of yourself. And so it activates what I call an inner teen wolf. It's almost like being a wolf in a wolf pack. Like you want to be alpha male or alpha female, you want to be in charge, you want to be important, you want to be valued, you want to have a say in how things are done. And so people focus on becoming popular, right? That's why high school and middle school can be so painful, because this part of the brain accelerates, and are you wearing the cool clothes? Are you with the cool kids? You have the cool gadgets, right? And this time, people may conform with their friends too much. Do you guys remember high school and how painful that was? Right? And what happens is that when the dopamine system activates, it's like you're chasing a prize that you can't live without, and you have tunnel vision. It's like all or nothing. So if you don't make this one team, if you want to make this sport, your life is over. If there's this girl or boy you really like and they don't like you back, your life is over. If there's this SAT that you have to ace and you didn't, your life is over. Have you guys ever felt that way? Do you guys feel that way now? That if there's something you don't get, your life is over? That's when you know you're in brain 2.0, because chances are your life won't be over, right? But your brain makes you think that way. It's all or nothing, and you become very impulsive. Some of us, for instance, when we see like a chocolate cake, it's almost like, oh my God, I'm gonna die if I don't have some. And then when you start eating, you're like, I'm gonna die if I don't eat another slice, and another slice, and another slice. And Facebook is like that, or Instagram, or Snapchat. I gotta have more likes. I have to have more likes, and then you get, but whatever likes you have, it's never enough, right? It fades, and then you need to do another post and get even more likes, right? So this part of the brain desensitizes to whatever is going well, and you just need more and more and more to keep it going, right? So a lot of us who have been chasing carrots our entire lives, we look at these carrots we have, we're like, it meant so much to us at the time, and now that I have it, why don't I care about it anymore? It's like, right? Like you go to the store, you love that dress or that shoe, you gotta get it, you buy, you bring it home, you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna wear it. Why did I obsess over it so much, right? This part of the brain, no matter what it is, a top job, a Mercedes, a fancy new house, it doesn't actually make you happy once you get these things. And so where does real happiness come from? It comes from activating Brain 3.0 and nurturing it. So this part of the brain helps you feel that sense of well-being, that sense of mastery, that your life is going the way you want. And even no matter what stuff is happening out in the external world, if you can align yourself with Brain 3.0, you can live in Brain 3.0, you won't feel like a leaf being blown about in the wind, okay? And so I call this the Interstage, because when it's activated, you're connected to your inner wisdom. You kind of have a sense for what you should or should not do. You're not just chasing what everyone else is chasing. You know what you can say no to, because it's really not that important. You're grounded in your values. You can embody your values and your aspirations. You're the person you really want to see in the world. And so you make wise and long-term decisions. And really what happens is that when you're in Brain 3.0, the neural pathways that connect into Brain 1.0 and Brain 2.0 are so strong that whenever your inner Godzilla activates or your inner Teen Wolf activates, you can calm them, right? That's what's happening. It's not that those parts of the brain goes away and you don't feel them anymore. You can still feel the fight or flight response. You can feel the anxiety of the dopamine system making you chase things, but you can also turn down the volume so it doesn't drive you nuts. Does that make sense? So this is what we're trying to help you develop today and tomorrow. We're not gonna get you all the way there. You need to continue to practice activating Brain 3.0, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And wherever you are right now, no matter how strong or not strong Brain 3.0 is, you have a choice of making it stronger. You can always activate it and use it. It's there. And so one way to think about it is like upper body strength versus lower body strength. Many of us can easily walk up a flight of steps. Our legs can carry our body weight. I can do squats right now, right? My legs are strong because it's been carrying my weight my entire life, right? And furthermore, I use it every day. So Brain 1.0, Brain 2.0 are like lower body strength. You're used to using it. Schools have trained you to use it. Your parents have trained you to use it. The entire world keeps triggering Brain 1.0, Brain 2.0. Upper body strength, on the other hand, unless you train and you play sports, how many of us can do 20 push-ups? How many of us can do 20 pull-ups? Can your arms lift your body weight? No. You have to train, right? You have to play sports. You have to develop those muscles. So Brain 3.0 is like that. Unless you're developing Brain 3.0, it won't be strong, because in our society, we use carrots and sticks to train people, and it's not naturally strong unless you decide to use it. You're the only person that can activate Brain 3.0 inside yourself. Does that make sense? Okay. So our emotional states correspond to brain activation. So whenever you feel overwhelmed, rejected, stepped on, punished, that's Brain 1.0. Sometimes stuff is really happening to put you in that state, but sometimes it's a response that's triggered because it's associated with something that's happening in your life, and it's internal and not external. And you're the only person that can discern whether you should be in Brain 1.0, whether it's going to help you, or whether it's actually hurting you. Same thing for Brain 2.0. If you feel FOMO, which I feel a lot, the fear of missing out, if you feel that you're constantly running after things and you're never getting them, if you feel impulsive, like if there's anything you want, you click that Amazon one-click buy button, you get it right away, that's when you know you're in Brain 2.0. And if you like something and someone else has it and you feel envious, that's when you know you're in Brain 2.0. It's not a bad thing. Like I look at Beyonce and she totally puts me in Brain 2.0. You know, when I watched the royal wedding, I was like, damn, why don't I get to marry Prince Harry, right? That's Brain 2.0. We all have it. It's not a terrible thing, but to live your life that way, you won't be happy, right? And again, sometimes you can say they did it to you, but most of the time, like, you're in Brain 2.0 because you have stories going on of things you want that put you in a Brain 2.0, right? Again, it's not necessarily external. There's a lot of internal things, whether you should be in Brain 2.0, whether it helps you or hurts you. And then in Brain 3.0, that's when people actually do things that are altruistic, that genuinely help other people without any benefit for themselves. That's when people can collaborate, work for something bigger than themselves, to innovate, come up with great new ideas, to be creative, and to have the courage to stand up for what they believe in, or to fight fires, to save people at the risk of their own lives, right? We don't do those things when Brain 1.0 is controlling us. We don't do those things when Brain 2.0 is controlling us. We do those things when we're in Brain 3.0, right? And the world would change if more people spent more time in Brain 3.0. Your world will change if you spent more time in Brain 3.0. Does that make sense to you? So this is what we're talking about.